Live from parts unknown, you're listening to Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Podcast, the only wrestling podcast on the planet, we think. Sit back, relax, prepare for positivity to run through your veins as Simon Miller gives you your weekly dose of powerful pro wrestling audio. It is Miller Time.
Hello and welcome to Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Show. My name is Simon Miller and thank you very much for joining me on a lovely Friday. The weekend is just around the corner, so you should be pumped. You can go out and do whatever you want for a couple of days. Also want to shout out to everybody that joined the unexpected Tuesday live version. Obviously, we do 2 episodes a week. It was the best one I've ever done in terms of numbers. So there's every chance I'll try it again on Tuesday because if more people are going to listen and more people are enjoying it, that's what I'm going to do. But you put a smile on my face to shout out to all of them. If you are a brand new listener, like I say, we do 2 episodes a week. And the second episode is always really cool because I head over to my Patreon, patreon.com/Simon316. And that is how you support the podcast, should you so wish. Even $1 allows me to do this. And I get a patron onto the show. And today, not for the first time, not for the second time, even though I thought it was, I got it wrong. But for the third damn time, it's my friend Dan. Dan, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks.
Good, dude. Honestly, I love this. 3 times coming back on, man. I mean, thank you for the support, but also this is really cool because, you know, long-time listeners to the show, they'll know who you are. They'll know your deal. I think that's great. Yeah. I think that's really exciting, man. Like, this is why sometimes you get idiots on the internet go, oh, it's a terrible idea. No, it isn't. This is the best idea in the world because, you never know what kind of opinion it's going to get, and the more you do it, you know, you can build up a quasi co-host. I think it's great, man. I think it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I enjoy coming on. I enjoy listening to the other people who come on and you get people all over the world. They're from Australia, from the United States, from Britain. There's probably a few other places that people have been on, and everybody's got different opinions, different stories, different looks and feels of what they like and what they don't like about wrestling. So it gives you kind of a broader perspective on what's out there. So
hell yeah,
it's great.
Because one of the best things about wrestling in 2019 is the community. Also one of the worst things, of course. But I like to think that we've managed to create a little cool community around Simon's Pro Wrestling Show. In fact, I do think that. And I wanted to embrace it. So, man, thank you so much for coming on the third time. Now, as you rightfully reminded me, last time we were talking, we were hinting about the WrestleMania 35 main event and Charlotte and Ronda and Becky Lynch, of course. Now, we're not only past that, we're not only through it, but we've kind of got an idea of where Becky Lynch is going now. She is a 2-belt champ, whatever you want to call it. She's going to be taking on Charlotte Flair and Lacey Evans at Money in the Bank. But, dude, it seems like a fine place to pick everything up. What did you think about it? Are you happy? You're not happy? Just to throw a little bit of salt onto the fire. These are not my words. I am not saying this before people go crazy. And we are going to talk about the WWE financials more later. They've come out, not the greatest numbers you've ever seen. And there are, Wrestling Observer was one, and there's some other people out there too, of people saying that maybe the numbers are down because WWE focused very heavily on the women's division and that didn't resonate as much as they thought it would. Again, I don't personally believe that. However, as we are talking about it, I was going to bring it up on this episode anyway, we may as well throw it in here. So, dude, give it to me. How do you feel about it? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Where we stand right now?
Yeah, I like the build for the most part. The match itself, I did not think they did as good a job as they could have done. And I'm not sure if it was because like Ronda broke her hand. So if that's the reason they kind of maybe cut it short a bit or whatever, then I mean, I give them a pass on that. But I think they didn't book it quite as well as I don't know, I thought they would have. So I'm going to compare it to Gargano Ciampa, because I think there's some parallels there in the way they built up the two feuds. So with the 3 women, they each had their own kind of weapon of choice. Becky had that crutch, and Charlotte had Ken, which I'm glad they dropped, but the kendo stick.
That's so bad. It was so bad, that Ken thing.
Yeah. It was terrible. But that was her weapon of choice, and Ronda's weapon of choice was Ronda. And they could have built those things into the match, I think, to really get it into a third gear. And they didn't. And it's not like I'm not the person who's like, oh, they need to add all this extra violence. They added it into the storyline and then didn't really pay it off at WrestleMania. They brought in a table, which nobody used during the whole feud. So it really didn't, it was like a nothing thing. But had they brought in maybe those other things and built up that part of the story, they could have really crescendoed that whole storyline. Because this wasn't the beginning. This was the end of 6 months of storytelling and a blow off, and Ronda was going away for a while anyway. So to me, they could have kind of brought that piece in. That's kind of where I was a little disappointed. I felt the main event was not as well orchestrated as it could have been.
No, I think that's fair. It wasn't I was really invested in that story, and I actually think they did.
Yeah.
I agree with it I agree with all of your points. I thought the go home angle with the car and the police was brilliant. You know, yeah. I understand it was dumb, but I think people have forgotten that wrestling's best when it is dumb. I mean, that's why I love it so much. And I did enjoy everything up to it. Yes, it didn't go, you know, in the right direction for all of it. It was a bit too much toing and froing, but ultimately, you know, when we got to WrestleMania 35, I was like, I absolutely want to see that match, and I'm ready for it, and I'm excited for it. But yeah, I think a combination of the show being too long and it not being the greatest. It wasn't the greatest main event we've ever seen at WrestleMania. There's no point pretending otherwise. It wasn't bad, and I enjoyed it, and we got the right winner. So you got the feel-good factor. But that, along with the fact that we had that weird botch finish, it was a bit like Sting Hogan from Starrcade, whatever it was. It did all add up to where you thought, okay, cool, Becky Lynch is the right choice. However, I don't necessarily think it was the greatest build and execution of a WrestleMania feud we've ever seen, you know, and that happens sometimes. It happened with Triple H and Roman Reigns. It happened with Randy Orton and Triple H a few years ago. Even the Roman Reigns Undertaker match didn't really kind of, you know, light anything on fire. In fact, really, I mean, I'd say WrestleMania 31 is the last time a main event left us feeling elated when Seth Rollins ran in to cash in. Am I right in saying that? I believe I am. I am, but that's just my opinion anyway.
Yeah, probably. And I mean, yeah, I didn't like the finish. I didn't like the roll up finish in a feud that was so, like, to me, a roll up is something that continues a feud, because it's like, oh, that's a fluke out of nowhere. Maybe they could have built the story around Becky being a better wrestler than Ronda being a fighter, and maybe with Ronda going away and coming back, she comes back and kind of rejoins the wrestling thing, and maybe works on some of her wrestling type holds and counters and stuff like that, instead of relying on 100% MMA, giving a little bit credibility back to the wrestling part of her thing. Like, I didn't like the way that she kind of broke that fourth wall, broke character. To me, I don't know, I compare it to, like, could you imagine in The Dark Knight where the Joker says, oh, the only reason you're winning is because Christopher Nolan's you're Christopher Nolan's pet or whatever. It's like so dumb. Like, it doesn't need, you don't need to break the fourth wall.
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, I liked it because, like I said before, if any kind of angle gets people talking, I'm usually quite excited about it, because even if I think these days, like I said earlier, I think I get a kick out of. I get a kick out of what the community reacts to things. So even if I don't actually like the angle, I'm like, well, actually, I'm enjoying this. Like with the Viking experience, right? By the end of the day, I was loving it by the end of the day, because it felt like we'd all got together to have a fun chat. And that was all right with me. So, but you're right. I mean, it's hard for me to say, because I think on one hand you are right, because the whole point is that's a magician giving away the trick, isn't it? And the whole point is the magician's not going to give away a trick, but I'd be lying if I said that I didn't enjoy the fact that it got everybody talking. That's why wrestling is so weird in 2019. You don't just enjoy it, and maybe one of the reasons it's broken, but you don't enjoy it for just the product anymore. You enjoy it for all these weird little reasons, and it's very weird. Very, very strange.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like Triple H and Batista did the same thing, and you're fighting the man, not the character. It's like, you can do that without having to say that. You can say, okay, we're not going to have a wrestling match. We're going to have a fight. They've done that before, and that keeps you in that world. I like to kind of, when people talk to me about wrestling, and you talk about this all the time when you try to explain to your friends about wrestling, and people talk to me about it, and it's like, oh, why are you a wrestling fan? You know, it's fake. It's like, well, yeah, but so is Friends.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why I want to look at it. It's like, it's a TV show. And then when they break through the fourth wall completely and say, no, that's a TV show over there, but this is real. It's like, you're killing me. I can't explain that to people. It's like, okay, and it's part of the TV show, but it's not. And it's like,
wow,
it makes it frustrating a little bit as a fan when you're trying to talk to other non-fans and tell them like why you enjoy this particular type of entertainment versus what you would call mainstream entertainment. So.
Well, I think that's the other issue, is that I watch a lot of WWE programming these days, and I come away thinking, I always have to try and put myself in the shoes of a new fan, and sometimes I try and watch it like that. I'm like, who the hell would be able to ever understand what's going on? Which is crazy, because WWE used to be brilliant at that. I mean, their video packages are still awesome, but they don't do them as much as they did, or at least they're not as important as they once were. I don't know how you just tune, because what you want to be able to do is, you want people to be able to do is, somebody's flicking through the channels and you stop and you go, oh, what's this? You know, and I don't. I mean, the big thing for me recently was the Bray Wyatt thing on Raw. Now again,
I wanted to touch on that.
Well, I made a huge mistake of making a joke about it on Twitter, and everyone thought I hated it. I didn't. I love the Bray Wyatt stuff. It's the dumbest thing I've seen in years, and that ties into what we were talking about before. But I would say, and you know, I'm happy to be debated on this, and some people have. If you were flicking through and you saw, oh, wrestling is on, and then the next segment was that, I think you're turning it off very quickly, because you don't know who Bray Wyatt is. It didn't really explain, because that was a segment made for people like you and I, right? It wasn't a segment made for people that's never watched wrestling before. And it may have got you in because it was so wacky and juxtaposed, but I think that's a huge thing nowadays, is how is WWE making new fans? That's what they need. If all the old guard are turning off, and obviously, you know, TV ratings are down quite substantially nowadays, but if you need new people to tune into your TV show, I don't really know what you're doing to ensure that's the case. I think there's a lot of fan service, and I appreciate that, but I also think there needs to be a balance, and I don't see that very much anymore.
Yeah, I can see that, and I think that ties into even the female storyline going into WrestleMania. I think it pleased the people watching, but it didn't seem to draw in anybody new. And I don't know if that's because people don't want to see women wrestling, or they thought it was, or they just think it's like it was 5-10 years ago. Because I don't know, if I had not watched and somebody said, oh, there's going to be a female main event at WrestleMania, I'm like, oh, great, a Penny and Bra match. Like, that's what I would have thought as a fan had I not been watching the last 5 years. So it makes it a little difficult to bring it back. But
Well, I was going to say, I thought that as well when they were really heavily pushing the women, and they should have done that, and they should have said it's a big deal. But again, there was a small part of me, and I was like, you do know this makes you sound so archaic, WWE. Like in 2019, you're going, it's the first women's main, and people would be like, why are you taking so long, man? Like, what are you doing? So you're kind of damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And of course, the big thing is it's better to do it than not do it. So,
well, for sure, I think they earned it. I think they deserved it. I don't think they were being pushed ahead of anybody else. It wasn't a token thing by any stretch. It was the best storyline in the company.
Oh yeah,
like it wasn't even close. Maybe the Kofi thing kind of picked up some steam near the end, but even that it wasn't nearly as long running and all that stuff. So, I mean, they deserved to be in the spot they were in.
Oh, absolutely. And my other thing of that was always, you know, like if you don't do it now, you don't know what position you're going to be in next year, and this is absolutely the right time to do it. You know, if you don't, you've screwed up. So I'm absolutely, you know, it's 100% what they should have done. And now we see what happens from this point out. I guess we see what's next. I mean, what do you think about everything post? What do you think about Becky 2 belts and her 2 different matches at Money in the Bank? Is it too much? I mean,
yeah, I think that might be designed to get a belt off of her. So I think she's gonna beat Lacey Evans, which makes sense. And I think she's going to beat Charlotte, and whoever the Money in the Bank winner is going to take her out after that. Because it's like 2 matches that are probably going to be, well, even the one against Lacey Evans is going to be fairly competitive, and Charlotte's going to beat the crap out of her for most of that, and then somebody's going to come down and cash in. That's what I think is going to happen. I know there's 2 cash-ins in back-to-back years, but I think that's what's going to happen, and then Becky goes to Raw, and because Raw needs some talent over there. They don't have a whole lot of star power on the woman's side. So Becky being there makes that better. Charlotte being left on SmackDown with whoever the Money in the Bank winner is. To me, that makes sense. But well, I mean, we'll see. She might win both and keep going on. Who knows?
Where
That's what I think. Yeah.
What's probably a better question? What do you think that means for Becky in terms of fan reaction? Because I'll say I think she's cooled off a little bit over the last few weeks, as I think anybody would. I think that's just the nature of the beast sometimes. But do you think that fans are going to be behind that? Do you think they're going to be pissed off? I mean, if let's say Charlotte takes the belt back to SmackDown, for example, everybody hates Charlotte. Do you think that everyone's going to go into meltdown? I mean, I agree with you. I think that's 100% the right thing to do. How they do that without making everybody go crazy is another question.
Yeah, I think you do it with the Money in the Bank winner. After the fact, you've got this exhausted person who managed to struggle out after a 20-minute main event match, which that's probably going to be the main event too. And then maybe it's a returning Sasha Banks who's going to do the full heel turn. Maybe, I don't know. I know they wanted to split them up, so that's probably not going to happen. But something like that.
What do you think about Sasha Banks, man? As we're here, go throw it in, man. Because my gosh, did that separate opinions?
Yeah. So I want to get into that whole thing. I want to get back to the Bray Wyatt thing later on. We can talk about that. But
well, let's do Sasha, then we'll do Bray, man. That works.
Yeah,
that works.
Let's do Sasha Banks. So I actually want to talk about all the people asking for the releases and why they're different. So I think Sasha and the Revival are in one category where they're being used. They're on TV all the time, but I don't know, maybe not what they want. To me, you don't get to complain too much when you lose a title or you're booked in a certain way. I mean, you're being used, and that's part of your contract. That's kind of what you sign up for. Sometimes it sucks to be used not as well as you think you should be, but I mean, that's kind of part of it. On the other side, you got like the Ty Dillingers, and you got the big guy from blanking on the name.
Luke Harper?
Luke Harper.
Yeah.
And you got that group over there who is not being used. And to me, it's like, that's a different thing. If you're not being used, one, you don't make the house money, you don't make as much money, you're not getting the exposure, and you don't get to do what you really want to do. So, I mean, these are creative people. They don't want to be sitting at home just waiting for the next thing to come. And I don't know, maybe Luke Harper went about it the wrong way, but I mean, if he asked for it. But to me, I'm more on side with Luke Harper than I am with like the Revival and Sasha Banks. So, because they're being used, and Sasha's being used really fairly well. I mean, yeah, I get they'd split them up and they didn't get the long title reign they thought they were going to get. But I don't think WWE has ever done first-time, long-time champions. I can't think of a time they've done it. Even way back in, like when Buddy Rogers won the title, I think he only held it for a couple of months before they gave it to the next guy.
No, yeah, they did long title reigns in WWE, are few and far between. I mean, that's why the CM Punk one was so crazy. Everyone was like, "My word, this is going on forever."
Yeah. But all the first timers, even like the new belts they've introduced, they give it to a high profile person, and then they lose it within a month or two. Adam Cole lost the North American Championship. Tyler Bate lost the British title, the UK title. Trying to think of the other ones. Even Pat Patterson back in the day, he lost it after his momentous tournament win in Rio de Janeiro. So
exactly.
He didn't hold it that long either. It was always the next person who there was always just like a second person they would give it to. So I mean, it wasn't. Maybe some promises were made or some, but I mean, in WWE, promises don't really go that far. It's like it's not written down, so it's. I think it's. Can't live with that.
I think it all depends on what exactly she did, and we're never going to know, right? We're just not.
Yeah.
I think it's very unlikely that we'll know, and that that to me is because I completely understand and I completely respect anybody, no matter what they've achieved, wanting to achieve more. Like I'm very much like that in the terms of as soon as I've done something, as much as I probably know that I should revel in it, I don't. I kind of go, right, what do I do now? What do I do now? And it's probably not the healthiest way to be, but I understand that line of thinking. What I don't get, and again, we don't know what's true, what's not true, I don't get making a fuss, and I don't get throwing tantrums, because, again, it's all about us as individuals, and I'm much more of a, well, let's be professional and not burn any bridges, and yada, yada, yada. And you don't know how many times she's, beating her head against the wall, or asked for this or asked for that, and maybe being told, oh, by the way, we're also splitting you up from Bayley. But then again, when you mentioned it just then, when you bring it over to someone like Luke Harper, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, that's different because he seems very respectful. Admittedly, maybe misjudged the game a little bit by, going public with it as opposed from doing it behind the scenes. Because, of course, we saw Goldust have his contract agreed to run out, and there was no sort of funny business with, adding on time for injuries and whatnot. But then there was rumours this week as well that apparently Triple H had to convince Vince McMahon that was the right thing to do. So I think Vince has a sort of one-track mind with this. But yeah, Luke Harper does the same thing, and the rumour is he's not going to be let out of his contract. He's been injured, so they're going to extend it by X amount of months. And that does it just does, no matter who you are, not because it's WWE. Any company, you do come across as quite shitty because you're not doing anything with Luke Harper right now. So why on earth would you want to lock him in? So I can kind of see it from all, different guises, but that doesn't mean it doesn't suck a little bit, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah, it does suck. I don't know, the way that Luke Harper put out that original message, it sounded like it was mutual.
Exactly. Yeah, I thought it was done, right? I thought it was done.
Yeah, I thought it was a mutual thing that the company says this is okay, and I think it's okay. And I mean, me as a fan, I want to see Luke Harper. I'd love to see him on TV. I think he's, the underrated term gets thrown around a lot, but he's underrated by the company. He's a really good worker, and I think the company was high on him at one point because JBL used to talk about him as a future champion, and I don't think you're allowed to just go out and kind of go off the script and say, yeah, I think, like, as a commentator, and say, yeah, this guy is a future champion, because that only gets pegged to a few different people. I mean, they talk about like Ruby Riott. Michael Cole always brings up Ruby Riott as a future women's champion, trying to build this person up, and I think that's always very controlled as to who gets to talk about themselves or be talked about as a future champion versus anybody else. So I think they were high on him at one point, but they just haven't used him at all. And to me, if you're not being used, you should be allowed to kind of explore other things. If you don't want me, then I can go somewhere else and go make money somewhere else and go be happier somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're using the guy if you're using him every week and he's just jobbing out, well, you're still using him. Like, that's a role that needs to be played in wrestling. Somebody's got to win. Somebody's got to lose. It's got to move the story along. So
it's hard.
But if you're not on TV and you're never being seen, there's no point being there. You can go do something else. But I don't know.
It's hard.
That's just me.
Well, it's hard because it depends how you look at it again, right? We're looking at it as from fans. But let's say that you ran WWE, you're a little bit worried about AEW, and you know that Luke Harper is good, but you also know that you can't really fit him into your show, and you know you've got him under contract legally, and you're an asshole. you may go. You don't get to leave. And it's hard to argue it because they signed the contract. That's the issue. And I'm not saying, it's like, I always say this when it comes to microtransactions in video games, which I know is a strange analogy, but microtransactions in video games are mostly a bad idea, right? They ask people to spend more money when they've already put money in. However, on the flip side to that is the business model of the reason that publishers keep putting them in is because people keep buying them. So you have this really weird back and forth. You're like, well, it's kind of bad, but also I see why they're doing it because they make money and it's a business at the end of the day. And that is all people care about. Again, I throw football in there or soccer for the American audience. There are so many fans out there and I respect them all. And if this is how you want to live your life, honestly, more power to you. But there are so many fans out there that say, oh, the club shouldn't do this, the club shouldn't do that, or that this player should show loyalty. There's no such thing. They just want to make cash. And it's the same with wrestling. Vince McMahon probably knows that Luke Harper can go out there and smash it, but he doesn't have to let him do it. So he doesn't. Yeah. And that does suck. But at the same time, it's capitalism and all those kind of words. So,
yeah, I think they should be a little more like. I mean, if you're going to use the guy, then use the guy. And if you're not going to use them, and just pay them just to do nothing, just to spite other companies, what you're doing is you're dealing with a human being, and in Luke Harper and Ty Dillinger and all these other people. These are human beings, and they want to go out and they want to work. And here's a person who just wants to go out and perform and go out and do whatever. And you got a company who's saying, we're not going to use you, and we're going to we're going to pay you out of spite because we don't want you going to this other company because we we think that you could potentially help them hurt us. And it's like, if you think they can help the other company hurt you, then use that person. There's obviously something there, but I mean, they're just kind of hoarding talent. And I don't know. To me, it's like, if you're not going to use somebody, let them go.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm the same, and especially because WWE is just, buying people up, for lack of a better term. I mean, that's why they've got WWE UK. WWE UK is a great show, but I think it kind of exists there just to try and give an outlet for people from the UK scene to sign up to WWE. And, you, as a wrestler, you absolutely should decide to go or not go, or, everyone judges you, they're crazy. But, I mean, and there's a long list now. I mean, the Revival wanted out, Sasha Banks, Luke Harper, Ty Dillinger got out. That one makes no sense. Goldust is gone. There was somebody else being reported the other day. I can't remember who that was. Oh, apparently Dean Malenko left today as well as an agent. Now,
yeah. Dean Malenko left, and a few other agents have left recently. Apparently Road Dogg has gone AWOL or something.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be a part of the creative team anymore, yeah.
Yeah. The other one is Mike Kanellis and Maria Kanellis. But, I mean, they're being used now, so they fall into more of the Sasha Banks area. But, I mean, that was... They kind of did it to themselves, I think, a little bit, with coming into the company and then Maria getting pregnant like right away, and Mike having his personal problems and all that. So they were getting a little bit of a push early on, but then all that other stuff happens, and you can't really do much about that. And, I mean, the company is good that they kind of get behind those people, but then when they come back and they try to find a spot for them or not try to spot, then they get like upset. Oh, they're not using us the way that we want to be used or whatever. But I mean, to me, I mean, each case is kind of a little bit different. So it's hard to lump them all together, or it's like a case by case basis. But yeah.
It is a crazy time, right? And that's why when people go, oh, all elite wrestling, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. This is why they're competition. Luke Harper's not asking for his release without that. Neither is Sasha Banks. None of them are. They're doing it because they believe there's a viable alternative. And up to this point, I mean, New Japan was to a certain extent, but, New Japan doesn't work like that. It doesn't have a massive roster, New Japan. It just doesn't. Right. That's just the truth. So that's why it's cool. And that's why it's exciting. Or at least that's why I'm excited about it. So,
and New Japan really isn't not on TV in North America. It doesn't have it has its following in North America, I think, with the more of the hardcore wrestling types. But that's outside of that. Like, nobody. If I didn't follow wrestling on the internet and just watch WWE, I wouldn't know any of the people coming, like the Bullet Club and all that. I wouldn't know anything about them because they're over there, and it's a completely different group. I know a little bit about them. I've seen like 1 or 2 matches of Kenny Omega and like a few others on like All In and stuff like that. A few things here and there, but I don't have the time to follow that much more. The WWE takes up too much time as it is. So.
Well, I mean, that's it. That's it, dude. But it's fascinating. Yeah. It really is. And, it's only going to get more intriguing, especially because, again, the financials came out and WWE lost money this quarter. Now, it's not the craziest thing in the world because they lost money because they knew that, in the next quarter, they're about to make so much money they can go and spend more. But you're still going to get that reaction online. And as we know, the reaction online, the social media craziness is what fuels everything nowadays. It really does. So we'll have to see. Before we get too far off topic, though, dude, let's cycle back to Bray Wyatt, because I know you wanted to talk about that. This is the first time I think I've talked about it with anyone directly on the podcast, dude. So please let me know what you thought.
Okay, so my first reaction, right after it happened, I tweeted out, I've been watching wrestling for over 40 years. And that was the worst thing I'd ever seen. That was so bad. It was so I'm watching. I'm like, what is going on? And then they played it again on SmackDown the next night. I watched it again, and it's like, well, it's still really weird. And then I heard it was like Bray Wyatt's idea. So to me, I want to kind of back him on that and see. I want to see where it goes. But my first reaction was, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. And I've seen like Mantar, so I mean, it was so weird and terrible. Like that, I don't know, that stupid puppet The Velociraptor?
Yes, it is a raptor. People, the amount of tweets I get, Miller, it's a buzzard. Look, it may meant to be a buzzard. That ain't no motherfucking buzzard, man. I'm going to type in buzzard right now. Buzzard into Google. Let me see what it looks nothing like a buzzard. No, it's a Velociraptor. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, so so when I saw that originally, I'm like, the first vignette with the thing coming up and laughing, I'm like, oh, this is like WCW mid-90s level bad. It seemed like something that was written up that, I know I compared it to Spinal Tap. For people who've seen Spinal Tap, remember there's a scene where they're talking about Stonehenge and they write it up and it's going to be this big thing. And it's like, it sounds really cool in paper. And then you see it later on in reality. And it's like this 18-inch thing that they ended up putting. And it just looked terrible in practice. But on paper, it looked great. And to me, that's the Velociraptor thing. Probably looked great on paper, and then they went to like dollar store and got a puppet, and that's what they used. Had they done it in reverse, I think it would have been better, because the doll thing, like for you, the doll is creepy. I horror stuff doesn't really bother me, but
I completely appreciate that. Yeah,
but there's more of a visceral reaction to the doll, but less to the Velociraptor. Had it been second, I don't know, maybe. Who knows?
No, I think
but it's called Mercy. I wonder if that's after Waylon Mercy. I wonder if that's like an Easter egg.
You know what? Now you've said it, it probably is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's why. I understand why people don't like it, but that's why I kind of do. I think it's quite layered. I think there's a lot in there that hopefully we'll be able to, look back on and go, oh, that was cool and this was cool. To me, again, when I first watched it, I was like you. I was like, what the flip? Do we just want to kill Bray Wyatt? Do we hate him? Do we hate Bray Wyatt and we want to run him into the ground? But when I watched it back, I realised there were some ideas going on here. For example, the whole, he listens to his gloves and one says heel and one says hug or whatever. Hurt. And the puppets were so bad. I'm like, well, if we do get super creepy with it, that's my thing. I think if 3 weeks' time we're getting some vignettes and some videos that are genuinely making people feel edgy, then I think we're onto something. And also, I was going to criticize it, but my overwhelming kind of opinion of it was, well, I've been asking for something different. And now they've given me something so different. I kind of feel like a hypocrite if I then go, oh, but not this. It's like, well, where do I draw the line? But
what do you want?
But that doesn't take away from the fact that you are right. When you do, I did the same thing when I happened to first see it on Twitter because I woke up and it was one of those things. Usually I ignore Twitter, but there was so many people tweeting me about it. I was like, well, I have to go look at the clip now. I know I shouldn't watch Raw out of sync, but I have to see it. And I was like, the fuck are you doing? But it did. The more I watched it, the more I laughed. And when I found out that Bray Wyatt was the mastermind behind it and he hadn't had this thrown upon him, I was like, okay, I will go with it and I'll see where we end up. But it's interesting, man. Sorry, go on.
Oh, the one thing that I thought about, and before I knew Bray was behind it, is that he went for it 100%.
Yes,
so whether it was his ideas or somebody else's, that if this gimmick fails, it's not because he didn't put his heart and soul in it. So to me, I believe that he believes in this character. It was really weird. We'll see what happens, but no, go on.
No, dude, I'm with you, man. It's not really something we can judge until we know what the deal is, and right now we have no idea what the deal is. So, but it's interesting. It got people talking, and again, like we said earlier, that always makes me that always makes me happy. But I mean, the thing. My last point with it is to do what they want to do. I kind of feel like they have to go super crazy with it. No pun intended. And the only way to do that really is to kind of push the realms of PG. Are we really going to do that? I don't know if we are.
I don't know how they're going to get there. I don't know. It could be a rebirth of the original Doink the Clown.
Yep.
Or something similar to that. Yeah. That would be interesting as well. But I don't know. Hopefully they leave it as the original and not water it down too much. But I don't know. As far as like the new gimmick that I'm actually really enjoying is Sami Zayn.
Oh, dude, go man, talk about it.
And So I think the direction it's going is he's going after the fans, but I think he's going after some of the more negative type fans. And maybe he's talking about us too, who are talking about wrestling and whatever. But I don't know. I think, and maybe it's just the way that maybe every fan thinks they're not the negative fan. But I think his real target is, if you're one of those people out there who thinks, is it okay to boo Roman Reigns again? He's talking about you. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about you.
I'm talking about them too. I don't get that, man. Why would anyone boo? Anyway, we don't need to talk. I just find some things are bigger than wrestling. Like surviving a terrible illness wins every time in my book. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah, so I really like what Sami did in Montreal, and I'm in Toronto, so I get a lot of the humor that he was going for, and how easily he is able to insult people in Montreal. He's from Montreal, so he knows all the buttons to push. When you're from that hometown, you know, and I think Montreal is a little more sensitive than maybe some other places. A place like Toronto can be a little sensitive too, but in certain things. So the people from here, if they're going to heel on the city, they know exactly how to push those buttons. In Montreal, he just pushed all those buttons, and he had that crowd just going absolutely crazy.
Oh, dude.
Not quite Elias in Seattle crazy, but pretty close. That Elias in Seattle was unbelievable. But yeah, Sami had that crowd just eating out of the palm of his hand and doing exactly what he wanted him to do. It was so good.
Oh, dude.
I just don't know who he feuds with. And that's the thing with Bray Wyatt. I don't know who he feuds with, but I guess we'll see.
It's a good point, right? Like who is out there right now?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I really, really don't know.
Who wants to be on the toxic fan side?
Well, yeah, but that's it. You're going to have to balance it like Daniel Bryan, aren't you? Where Daniel Bryan's actually shooting a good message, but you've just got to come up with someone who is such a babyface. It doesn't matter. Like, I can't even think who that would be. Maybe a Finn, not a Finn Balor now, but somebody like a Finn Balor, where they're just.
It could be a Ricochet. To me, that would maybe make sense, and those matches would be great.
Absolutely, dude. Now, I think the good thing about that as well would be you don't have to go after what he's saying, if that makes sense. You can just ignore that and be like, stop being a dick. Like, you can kind of go that way. So, yeah, I mean, but I think Sami Zayn, and I think there's a What Culture video going up this weekend about it. But there is, there's this idea that a lot of the new gimmicks they're doing now certainly do feel like they're in the past, if that makes sense. In the sense that, you've got the Viking Raiders, and you've got Ricochet that has bullet sounds, and you've got Rick Rude, who's basically Bobby Roode or Robert Roode, who's basically Rick Rude, and Aleister Black, who he's got a coffin, so his entrance must creak. A lot of it does feel very new generation to me. Sort of mid-90s, and I don't have anything against that, but also it didn't work. So by that token, you've got to be quite clever with it.
But why would Aleister Black's lift creak? It doesn't make any sense. You just throw some oil on that. Like it's so silly. That kind of stuff. It's just so unnecessary.
I don't mind the creak. I won't lie. The creak I'm fine with. The bullet shot for Ricochet makes absolutely no sense to me. Mostly because they do it twice, and also with the creak too. What I don't understand about the creak is that going to get people to tune in? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like I don't understand what's the benefit of it? Like, fair play for doing it, but what is that going to get a million more people to tune in because it's got a creak and a bullet sound? I'm going to go with no, but I'm not a promoter, so I wouldn't dare say it. But I do see. It's weird. It's almost, you kind of got the Bray Wyatt thing is very gimmicky as well. It certainly feels like we're now moving away from the Attitude Era whole thing of, your gimmick is you. That doesn't feel like it feels like everyone gets a gimmick, and I'm not against that. I'm honestly not. If it helps and it changes stuff up, fair play. I just don't know if it is going to do that at the moment.
Yeah, and I do like to go back to Aleister Black. Like, it looks like they're rewinding on his character, and like with that kind of quiet vignette. I think that if they do that over a few weeks, and hopefully he's going to play the same character he came in as in NXT, which is the balanced character where he found himself, like, because that's how they built it originally. It wasn't like this goth character. It wasn't this emo brooding character. It was a guy who found balance, and balance
yeah.
is part of all the tattoos and all that. So like there was a story behind who Aleister Black was, and when they kind of brought him up, they kind of went a few different directions, but they called him brooding a little bit. And you mentioned it in some of your videos as well. Just that they weren't hitting that character. And I don't know why they don't just continue on with the NXT stuff, at least to start, and then see where it goes. It's as opposed to changing somebody into something else. Like and now they're the Viking Raiders, but they're acting like crazy. They're like the Berserker in the ring. I don't know if you remember the Berserker. It might be before.
Oh, I remember the Berserker, my friend. Don't you worry about that.
To me, it's like that's kind of, they're playing a toned down Berserker in the ring. Like they're just yelling, and it's like it's silly. In NXT, they had like this Viking undertone. They weren't actual Vikings. There's just like people who they wore the war paint because it was, well, the reason anybody wears war paint is to put a little bit of fear into your opponent. It's not because they're actual Vikings who are going to go raping and pillaging and like women's locker room. Watch out! It's crazy to go so over the top. It's so unnecessary in today's WWE. You just don't need to do it to that level. But I don't know.
We'll see, man.
Again, they're two guys who are really good, who will probably make it work one way or another. Hopefully.
Yeah. No.
Hopefully they don't get the early ascension treatment or the revival treatment and end up jobbing to some 50-year-old guys. I don't want to talk about those guys too.
Go, man. Go for it. Do it now. Do it now. Segue.
Yeah, segue into nostalgia. I know you love nostalgia. I hate it now. I hate it so much. I think after you hit 45, your last match has to happen before you're 45. As to like, this is my last big send-off match, because it seems to be after you hit about 45, the talent starts to really fade. The three worst matches at WrestleMania this year were Shane and Miz, and not because of the Miz, it was because of Shane. Shane's old and awful. Batista and Triple H was long and not very good, and the other one was the Kurt Angle match, and Kurt Angle can't go anymore. And these are all guys they're all close to 50. I think Batista's over 50, and I know Kurt Angle's 50, and Triple H and Shane are late 40s, 47, 48. They just can't go anymore. And it's like, I like that Shawn Michaels went out at 45, and because when he came back 8 years later, it was not very good. So,
I know. But in hindsight, like I don't agree with the whole your legacy gets ruined if you come back. It's just not true. People are very good at forgetting things, right? Like the second Star Wars trilogy. Everyone forgets it now. They're like, who cares? And you can debate about it, but that Shawn Michaels match was not the best. It was probably not a good idea in hindsight.
Yeah, and I just don't want to see those guys anymore. Not in the ring. If they want to do like an Undertaker thing with what he did with Elias, that kind of a one-off thing, to me that's cool. But when you start doing 20-minute matches once a year, the guys just they're not on the level anymore. And to me it doesn't ruin what they've done, because what they've done is all great. And if you want nostalgia, you got a whole network full of nostalgia. You can go back and watch any match anytime on the network and go back and see what these guys were like in their prime. I don't know. To me, the one frustrating thing about wrestling, and probably frustrating for wrestlers, is they get better at their craft as they get older, but they have a harder time doing the things they know how to do. Like they know how to build matches and stories and all that stuff within the match, but maybe they can't do the moonsault anymore. Maybe they can't do the jump from the ropes onto the chair, onto the tables, and all the cool stuff they did in their 20s and early 30s. As the body breaks down, they've got better at putting matches together, but worse at kind of making it all flow. And I don't know. And that's what I'm worried about with a person like AJ Styles in maybe 5 or 6 years. because I think he's like 40 now and he still can really go. But hopefully by the time he's 45, he's like has his great last match and kind of goes off and doesn't do the one more match thing. Because to me, I've seen this guy and I want to see the new guys. I don't want to see the old guys do their thing. I don't need to see another Triple H match anymore. It's just like, I just don't need to see it.
I know what you mean, dude. I as you said, I do like nostalgia. However, I completely understand what you're saying because right now, what's the thing that WWE lacks the most? Stars. They don't have any stars. WWE, the brand, is the star, and that's probably what's affecting TV ratings because if WWE is the star, just, pick and choose whenever the hell you want. It doesn't matter. You're tuning in for WWE, and WWE has hours of programs every week. So, and I get why they do that because they don't want to get burned like they did with Batista and Brock Lesnar and The Rock, I guess, was the first one technically that did it. But I guess the way you look at it is you're an old school fan. You don't want to see Triple H. And if you're a new school fan, do you care about who Triple H is? You don't, right? And that's not a Triple H thing. That's a sports thing. I've got nephews and nieces that watch football and other sports. And they don't care about the people that I like when I was a kid. Why would they? They mean nothing to them. And if they get super into it, they'll do they'll go and do their research and their history. But I don't buy into this whole, you've got to know. No, you don't. Watch it for however the hell you want to watch it. If you know nothing about what happened 25 years ago, who cares? I don't agree with that whole, you're not a real fan. Nah, bollocks. That's not how the world works, man. Everybody's different. Somebody can enjoy wrestling day to day if they want and know nothing. And if they're enjoying it, that's all that matters. So I totally get your point, dude. I totally get your point.
Yeah, and I think the older guys do come off better as stars. I've got Brad here, who you talked to way back, and he's 11. And people like Triple H and The Undertaker leave him in awe when they come out and they do their entrances and all that part of it. Like they look like stars.
Absolutely, dude. Which is why I will say I like the Ricochet entrance. As excited of the Ricochet entrance is real, and the Aleister Black entrance. Honestly, when I saw them live at the WrestleMania weekend, I was like, at least they come out and they feel like big deals. Do you know what I mean? They do something straight away, like, oh, who's this person?
Yeah. Hopefully they can. Somebody becomes the next John Cena because there really isn't one right now. I mean, Roman. I would like Roman to be able to take that mantle. He seems like the best person in that spot. Unfortunately, fans have kind of turned on him as a character too much. But I mean, he's really good at that role, and he's a good guy in the ring. His character's okay. He's not as great on the mic, and that really hurts a lot of like. I think it's going to hurt Ricochet a lot more than anybody else. He's not a very good guy on the mic. But but his thing in the ring is great, and I'm glad he's going to be on once a week because kind of that twice a week, him and Aleister Black, they get overexposed pretty quickly too. And that's another thing in wrestling. You don't want to be overexposed, and you don't want to kind of throw away all your good stuff in the first month or two and then have like nothing. Like, what's the next thing what's Ricochet going to jump off of next?
Yeah.
He'll probably be in the ladder match for Money in the Bank, and that could be spectacular.
I think that could be good because I think you're putting in a position to steal the show, right? And that's what you want. You want him to be in a position where he can steal the show, and I think that's important.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know anything about Ricochet when he came to NXT. I'd heard about him in the Indies, but I'd never watched him. So the first time I saw him was at a live show before he even got on NXT TV. I'm like hitting Brad. I'm like, oh, you got to watch this guy. He's going to do something spectacular. And he just had a regular match. It was a start off. He didn't do like his 450. I didn't even know he did a 630. I thought he did a 450 splash, but he didn't even do that in his match. He did a few flippy things, but nothing like super spectacular. I was like, oh, that's too bad.
Screwed. Where's all these things that I wanted? It goes to show. I do agree with you about overexposure too. Like, taking people off television is okay. It's okay. We can do this. Like, you don't have to have somebody on all the damn time.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know that there was I don't know if you saw the John Oliver thing.
I did, dude. Fascinating, man. Yeah. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, he was like 100% on almost everything. He kind of glossed over some stuff, but I
guess he had to, right?
But but I mean, the points he did hit and the no off season and all that stuff. like you said, if a guy misses a week, big deal. So let people have a week off every quarter. So you get 4 weeks off a year. Where you just take a whole week and you just go. You don't go to house shows. You don't go to TV. Nothing. At least. And I mean, obviously, when people get injured, that's a little bit different. But give people it's okay to have the time off. You can plan it in the right spots, so you don't have your champion away the go home show of Raw. But maybe the second show after the last pay-per-view, that person's not on TV for a week.
Well, I said this.
It's okay with that.
Yeah, I was talking about this the other day. Given the WWE schedule, you could even just give them 2 weeks off and it would feel like loads of time. Do you know what I mean? Like if you all of a sudden knew that you're going to work January through WrestleMania and then have 2 weeks off, you'd be like, wow, 2 weeks off for a wrestler is all the time in the world. Yeah. And it still makes a difference. So that way I understand you're not going to do these sort of huge fleeting changes, but you are just going to start adding those things in. I think anything like that is good. But again, it all comes down to the wrestlers, doesn't it? And that's if it's ever going to change, I don't know.
Yeah,
but it would be nice. Yeah,
and those guys either need to maybe unionize or get together and be a little more. They need a little more leverage, I think. And being independent contractors, you're kind of on your own. You're looking out for yourself. You can't really look out for the entire group and maybe kind of push back and certain like as an individual. Especially new to the company, you can't push back and say, you know what, I need 6 weeks off a year, like spread out through the year. I'm not signing unless I get that. They'll say, okay, well, we'll see you later because you're not a star. But I mean, Randy Orton has a deal like that now, but he's Randy Orton, like he's become a big star and all that stuff. So he's got a lighter schedule. I think AJ's was asking for a similar type schedule as well. One of those less house shows.
I think he's got it. Yeah, I think him and Daniel Bryan both have that now as well. And my worry about Daniel Bryan is what the hell's going on, right? He's definitely injured. That's what inspired or was the catalyst for the Kevin Owens heel turn. WWE won't say what's going on with Daniel Bryan, which leads me to worry that maybe it's a head injury thing. I mean, Kofi Kingston did stamp on his head.
Yeah. Well, what culture did did a video? I think it was yesterday. With the news, it was only one person reporting it, but they said that it's not the head.
I hope so. I hope that's fine. It's not fine, but
hopefully, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. The head is like with Daniel Bryan, one more head, and that's it. Like he's not the WWE is not going to let him back in. But with anything else, all the other things have like a healing time. You can pull your shoulder, or tear a muscle, or all that stuff it's all going to get better. Eventually, hopefully. I mean, there are complications sometimes, but for the most part, with modern medicine, you're going to get better. You'll be back in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 4 months, whatever the time of healing is. Everybody gets back about the same time. So, but with a head injury, he could be out for 2 weeks. He could be out for 2 years. You could never, like there's hockey players who got a concussion and never played again. And it's like some of them went to, like, I think it was Mark Savard went a couple of years of not being able to go out in the light anymore. Like he was just in a dark room. And
how crazy is that, man?
Yeah. And it was a dirty hit and all that stuff. But it's the same thing. Like wrestlers put their bodies through that stuff. And I don't know why Daniel Bryan was doing that kick in the head thing, because it's like, it's one of those moves that somebody in a storyline should turn around on him, and Kofi does. It just makes sense that you do that kind of. It's similar like with Nakamura with the come on thing. Guys are doing that as a mocking thing.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with the Daniel Bryan thing when he was doing the kick to the head. Well, you know what? I can do that too. I'm going to kick you in the head, and it just takes a little slip, a little too aggressive, and with a person who's had multiple concussions, it doesn't take as much. At least that's some of what I've heard. Don't take medical advice from a podcast, but apparently it's easier to get concussions as you've had more. So
dude,
stay away from that style.
Dude, it's that's what happens. You know, you weaken something, and it's weak. That's the deal. That's what happens. So there's always going to be a worry there. Although I will say, silver lining, I am happy they turned Kevin Owens heel. They botched his face turn by rushing him back. And I've always wanted a Kevin Owens face turn, but we can get to it down the line. Right now, I think it was the right thing to do. It got me excited. I enjoyed the fact they pulled the trigger on it so early because it surprised me. And that's why I thought it was because, we're just doing it. Okay, cool, let's go. So, what did you think about it then, man, before we start to wrap stuff up? Happy, not happy? Because a lot of people just couldn't believe it was so fast.
No, I really liked it. I don't know. I've only really seen Kevin Owens as a heel, and I really enjoyed him as a heel. I guess I saw him a little bit in ROH way back as Mr. Wrestling, but I didn't find that character all that interesting. But I mean, that's not every week TV and stuff. So, but I like Kevin Owens as a heel. It's a little more aggressive as a heel, not the chicken shit heel. I'm so tired of the chicken shit heel. I don't need that. That's why with Daniel Bryan, last time I was on the podcast, I said I didn't like small guys as heels. He knocked it out of the park. That's amazing. What he did and took that message and it's relatively a positive message. And you can take any positive message, and if you throw it in somebody's face enough, you just become an asshole. It's like
you do.
It's like with you're working out and you're eating and all that stuff. Like you have the positive vibe, but you can twist that a little bit and really be a jerk about it and go after people and say, you need to do this and you need to do that. And you're giving them good advice, but you're doing it in such a way that people are like F off, Miller, like leave me alone.
Oh, exactly. It's too much, right?
It's too much. Just twist it a little bit. Yeah. You can do everything in a nice way, or you can do it in a mean way. And with Kevin Owens, I kind of like the way he turned, and Kofi is super over, so it just takes a little turn like that, and he's like super villain again.
Yeah,
I did like the name the Big O because they did that in Montreal, and
of course, yeah.
in Montreal, there's the stadium where they used to play baseball and stuff. It's called the Big O.
Is that the Olympic Stadium as well? Is that right?
Yeah, the Olympic Stadium. They called the Big O. So Kevin Owens would say, "Oh, that's the Big O. That's funnier."
Yeah,
because it's a kind of a double entendre. It's Big O for that, and also the big orgasm if you want to go that route. Or you can just say he's just a big guy. So there's a few different ways you could take it. So it's kind of the PG, the Muppets PG era where they have the joke for the kids and the joke for the adults, and you can kind of take it in whatever direction you want.
And hey man, couldn't WWE do more of that if they tried? Do you know what I mean? They absolutely could. They absolutely could.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I like that. Raw is fine. Not really much going on there. But look, they gave us AJ Styles versus Seth Rollins. As I've said, we've always wanted that. At least we're getting it. That's the way I look at it. It's better than never getting it.
I'm not excited about that one.
Why not?
Because I'm 100% sure that Seth Rollins is going to win that match. So to me, there's no intrigue in the match. Like the match is going to be fine, but I don't know. I always like to watch a match where I'm not sure who's going to win.
That's fair, dude. That's fair.
I'm 100% sure he's going to win. I want to see that match. If they did that match at SummerSlam, which to me makes more sense, and Seth Rollins has had the belt for 4 months, now I think they could switch. So it might be 70% Rollins going to win, but I'm 100% sure that Rollins is not dropping to AJ Styles. So, I mean, it's going to be a good match, but it's not. If the outcome is not in up for grabs, then to me it's not as exciting as one where I don't know what's going to happen. I like to not know what's going to happen. So, I mean, that's the only part of not being excited. Seeing those two guys work in the ring is going to be great, but
dude,
I'd like it to be like one guy's going to win. Maybe AJ Styles wins and makes me look like a fool, but if Vince is listening, he can do that, but yeah,
dude, I can't argue with that, man. You make a good point. You make a good point. The best matches are always the ones where you don't know. So we will, we'll see what goes down. And on that controversial note, we'll wrap up the podcast.
All right.
That was a fast hour, my friend. That was a very, very, very fast hour. But dude, thank you so much for your time. As always, thank you for your candidacy and just being honest to the end. It makes it so much more just cool to have those kind of chats. So thanks again, man. And thank you for all the support. I appreciate it.
No problem. Can I plug something?
Absolutely, dude. Of course, man.
Okay.
Just go over nuts.
All right. So what I want to do, I want to plug you and all the other creators out there.
Oh, that's very kind, man.
If you have the extra $1, the extra $2, and you enjoy the content, whether it's Simon, whether it's some other content, throw that money into their Patreon. It does make a big difference for those guys, and they can continue to make that content. The world has changed a bit, and I mean it's going to be crowd supported funding from kind of here on out, especially with the smaller independent guys. So if you have it, do it. If you can't afford it, keep listening, spread the word. But that's all I want to plug.
Dude, you are a good man, my friend. That is very kind. I totally agree with that sentiment. Even if it's not me, always support your favorite creators when you can. I understand that sometimes finances don't allow it, but dude, that is a very nice message. Thank you, my friend.
No problem.
Awesome, dude. And thank you for coming on. Thank you for your time as well, man. You gave up an hour of your time for me, and I appreciate that as well.
It's always fun to talk wrestling and just... I can't believe an hour goes by so fast.
I know, dude. I know. And one day the analytics will tell me that we can do more than an hour. But until that day, we will stop at 1 hour.
Hour is perfect. Hour is a perfect length for a podcast.
It really is. I don't listen to podcasts that go over an hour. So I'm like, well, why would anybody else? So I'll just make it an hour and we'll move on. But yes, please do go to youtube.com/The Middle Report Rules. You can check out these podcasts on there as well, obviously, including you can see me if you really get a kick out of that. That's there. Twitter and Instagram at Simon316. And as my man says, patreon.com/Simon316 if you do have $1 spare. Dan, we'll have to do this again soon. It's too much fun. And yes, dude, just thank you again. And thank you to everyone that listens. Of course, we will be back probably next week on Tuesday now. I may try that one out again, but keep an eye on the YouTube channel. That's the best way to find out. I'll talk to you then.